Okay, so stopping full-time work in your early 40s is what they call the FIRE movement. And the FIRE movement is great if you can make a six-figure salary early in your career. That may be the way you can go. And what basically it is you're going to try to save 50 to 70% of your income towards retirement and retire very, very early. Now, unfortunately for most of us, we're not going to make six figures in our, mid to late 20s, and it's just not going to happen. So it's going to take us a little longer, and most of us will probably end up going the traditional route of retiring in our 60s and hopefully in our early 60s. So according to the National Survey of Millionaires, over 1/3 of the millionaires in the U.S. never made a six-figure household salary. Okay, and when I mean household, that means both incomes. So the first piece of advice I have for you is credit cards. Now, a lot of people advocate, and it's not a bad strategy, to use your credit cards for everything. Basically use them, to pay your mortgage even, and take those points and rewards and use those for different vacations or things like that can make your life a little bit easier. Personally, I think that using credit cards is kind of a bad idea. What I would do is first thing I would do is I would save up an emergency fund of cash that is enough that I could survive for 3 to 6 months. And I think that would really help out in those kind of emergencies, whereas if you're using credit cards, you get behind and you start missing payments, and that's going to cost you a lot of money, and it's going to really just spiral into a debt that's going to be hard to dig out of. So go ahead and work on building your emergency fund first. That's the first thing I would do, is get that emergency fund built up. The second thing is, don't leave money laying on the table. When you go to work for a lot of employers, what they're going to do is they're going to offer you a 401k or a 403b investment plan, and they're going to have some matching contributions in that plan. And what you need to do is, if they're matching 3 to 7%, then you need to put in your 3 to 7%. In other words, if you put in, 3% and they match 3%, that's 6% you're going to get. So always match what they're giving you so you maximize that. Now, as the years go by, when you get your annual wage increases, you can go ahead and take half that wage increase. Let's say you get 3%, take 1.5% and put that into your matching contributions, which will be, let's say they're matching 3% of anything you contribute. You start out with 3%, then you get a 3% raise. You can make that 4.5% that you're putting into your 401k contributions, and the other 1.5% you can use as a wage increase. It's a way to start putting more money into the plan than just the matching contribution. And eventually it'd be good to get up to 10 to 15% savings in that contribution plan. And another thing you can do is, while you're building your career and you're moving from job to job, which seems to be more of a trend nowadays, is when you go from one job to another, if that job has an increase in wages of, say, 10% when you switch jobs, take 5% of that. Again, take half of it, take 5% of that, and increase your 401k or 403b contributions. And that can really help out as you're building your career and help you get to that, 10 to 15% contribution rate. Now, something else you want to think about as you're building up those plans is you want to have some tax diversity when you retire. So what that looks like is you may have to take and put so much money into a traditional, which is a pre-taxed account, and so much money into a Roth, which is a post-tax account, or you could even invest in real estate or a different IRA, which is in a Roth. But having that tax diversification can really help out and it can really help out if you want to retire early, because like me, I don't have a lot of tax diversification, so I'm having to go ahead and pay a higher tax bill before I hit my Social Security and Medicare, because I don't have that money to draw off of a Roth account or an account that I've already paid the taxes on. And the third thing that I would really recommend is when you're buying houses, cars, things like that, buy something reasonable. Even if you can pay for, a $200,000 home, hey, if a $150,000 home fits the needs, that may be just as good. You don't have to buy a $70,000 SUV to keep up with the Joneses when you could buy a $30,000 minivan to haul your kids around and be just fine and have just as reliable of a vehicle. So when you're making those big purchases, think about those things. Especially, cars are the easiest thing to get upside down on. You buy a brand new car, you drive it off the lot, and guess what? You already owe money on that thing. You got to get gap insurance, which basically gap insurance says, hey, if I wreck this car, my insurance isn't going to cover all of it, so I've got to have enough insurance to pay for the rest of it just to pay the vehicle off. And you've already put a down payment on that vehicle and everything else. So please, when you're buying vehicles and things like that, look at reasonably priced used vehicles, have them checked out by a mechanic, and that should really help you out over the years. So I hope you've gotten something out of this video, and if you have, please hit that like button down there and watch this video next.